Violence breaks out on the third day of anti-government demonstration in Kenya.
Demonstrators gather in the streets as police patrol the area. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Ricky Mathay.
And I am Nina Richie Elagao Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines.
Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas projects March inflation at 7.4 to 8.2%. Mixed oil price movement is expected next week. The Philippines and United Kingdom strengthens maritime partnership. Manhattan grand jury indicts former U.S. President Donald Trump. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky fears U.S. election in 2024.
There are indications that inflation or the movement of prices for goods and services may have slightly slowed down in March. This is the estimate of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP, which says that it may only range from 7.4 to 8.2%. This is lower than their projection of 8.6 inflation rate in February. The BSP explains that their lower estimate for the March inflation rate is due to the rollback of petroleum products, lower prices of vegetables and fruits, and the expected decrease in prices of chicken and sugar. However, the BSP warns that high inflation rates in some areas of the country, such as the increase in electricity charges, could also be a factor. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, is expected to release the inflation rates for March on April 5.
The Kadiwa ng Pangulo or KNP initiative launched by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has reached new milestones. Total sales for Kadiwa stores have reached 3.6 million pesos. Also, President Marcos has inaugurated a new Kadiwa store in Bataan. Elijah Villanueva tells us more.
Based on the 2023 sales report, the Kadiwa program of the President in Cebu earned more than 1 million pesos just 2 days after it was launched on February 27, 2023. The KNP program in Luneta Park in Manila sold goods worth about 418,000 pesos, followed by Santo Tomas in Batangas, which earned over 688,000 pesos after its successive launch on March 1. The program at TUCP in Quezon City, which was launched on March 8, earned more than 333,000 pesos, while the Kadiwa program in Bicol earned over 1.2 million pesos. The Marcos administration continues to establish other Kadiwa programs to provide affordable and quality products to the Filipino people. And today, a new Kadiwa program was launched in Limay, Bataan, led by President Marcos himself. 68 sellers participated in the Kadiwa program, including those from the Department of Agriculture, Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, and Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE.
Ngayon, lahat ng dating na binabayaran ng kundi yung magsasaka, kung hindi yung mga nandito sa palengke, yung mga halimbawa yung pag-transport, yung packaging, lahat yan, ay tinutulungan na ng gobyerno para nga mabawasan ang presyo ng ating mga bilihin. Alam naman natin sa kasalukuyan, yan ang pinakamabigat na problemang hinaharap nating lahat. At pataas ng pataas ang presyo ng bilihin. At naging problema ito dahil tayo ay naging umaasa na tayo masyado bago ng pandemya, umaasa na tayo masyado sa importation. Napabayaan natin ang agrikultura at kaya mababa ang ani ng ating mga magsasaka. Kaya dahan-dahan namin inaayos ang agricultural sector dahil napakalawak nito ay dahan-dahan ay nagiging mas maganda naman yung ating tinatawag na value chain para diyan sa ating mga magsasaka. Kaya ang dulo niyan ay itong kadiwa.
The Marcos administration will not stop building more Kadiwa stores until even the farthest places can feel its impact throughout the Philippines. After the Kadiwa store's inauguration, President Marcos proceeded to distribute various aid to 1,500 residents of Bataan. This includes the distribution of food packs and cash assistance of 5,000 pesos each from the Department of Social Welfare and Development's assistance to individuals in crisis situation program. Negosyo carts and cash assistance worth 1.12 million pesos to beneficiaries of the Tulong Panghanap Buhay sa Ating Disadvantaged Displaced Workers program, as well as 350,000 pesos in financial assistance to students under the Special Program for Employment of the Students of the Department of Labor and Employment. The DTI also distributed 7.5 million pesos worth of goods under the Small Business Corporation's Rise Up program, while the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority provided scholarship grants worth 31,000 pesos to beneficiaries of the Special Training for Employment program. As the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, President Marcos also provided 2 farming equipment and fiberglass boats to farmers worth 2.96 million pesos, as well as 90 million pesos for the Farm-to-Market Road project under the Philippine Rural Development Project. The President also did not forget the fishermen, whom he provided with machinery and cash assistance worth 4 million pesos, including marine engines, fisheries port harvest, and a fry holding facility. The President hopes that the day will come when all Filipinos will have decent jobs and will no longer need this kind of assistance.
Ang aming sinasabing tulong na ibinibigay sa mga nangangailangan na kababayan natin ay hindi lamang yung cash, yung tupad, yung AX, kung hindi pati na itong Nego Card Project. Ito Nego Card Project ng Department of ng DOLE ito. Tapos ito naman mga lambat, meron din mga bangka nasa labas na binigay natin, pati na doon sa agriculture program ng RCEP, nakapagbigay po tayo ng mga traktor, ng mga harvester na malalaki para naman mas maging efficient ang ating pagsaka para naman mabigyan natin ng sapat na supply ang ating Kadiwa stores. Kaya nandito, yan po ang aming sadya rito.
Elijah Villanueva for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Motorists should fill up their gas tanks now as the consecutive rollback of oil products will soon come to an end. According to the oil industry sources, there will be a 1 peso and 40 centavo price increase per liter of gasoline, a 30 centavo increase per liter of diesel, and a 42 centavo increase per liter on kerosene or gas. Meanwhile, Regasco has announced a big-time rollback in liquefied petroleum or LPG. A reduction of 9 pesos to 10 pesos in LPG will be effective tomorrow, April 1st. The movement in petroleum products are attributed to the volatility of prices in the global market.
The Maritime Industry Authority says it has launched a marine safety investigation into the fire on MV Merijoy 3 off Basilan, which left dozens dead. JD Mahinay tells us more.
Authorities have launched a marine safety investigation into the fire on MV Merijoy 3 off the Basilan coast. The rescue team witnessed a grotesque scene on the second floor of the burned passenger vessel. Net 25 News team was able to enter the passenger vessel, where burned bodies were exposed in the area. In different areas of the ferry, more bodies can be seen below double-deck beds, like this corpse, whose belt remained on its body. Personnel from the Bureau of Fire Protection, or BFP, had recovered 18 bodies on the upper part of the ship. The cabin area remained inaccessible as it was still too hot to enter. Bangsamoro Autonomous Region BFP Representative SFO1 Joey Jacinto says the interior part of the ship remained covered with smoke and was still burning. This restricted investigators from entering its adherent danger. The BFP is waiting for the representative of Allison Shipping Corporation before they can investigate and extinguish the fire inside the cabin area. The operation is still ongoing. The BFP Barm region wants to conclude its investigation to hold liable who's responsible for the accident. Meanwhile, surviving passengers receive monetary aid. The Department of Social Welfare and Development provided 2,000 pesos to each survivor, while some provincial lawmakers gave 3,000 pesos each for the 68 passengers. Basilan Representative Muhib Hataman says his office has already coordinated with local government officials and authorities for an intensive investigation of the accident. He extends his sympathy to the families of the victims. JD Mahinay for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Philippine Coast Guard has raised its alert level to the highest as they expect an influx of travelers at the start of the long summer vacation. This complies with the directive of Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista to ensure safe sailing on the seas. Effective from April 2 to April 10, the Oplan Biyaheng Ayos Summer Vacation 2023 program aims to ensure smooth travel for citizens returning to their provinces. Philippine Coast Guard Deputy Commandant for Operations Vice Admiral Rolando Punzalan will closely coordinate with the Philippine Ports Authority and Marina to ensure the safety of sea travelers. The Coast Guard has strengthened its presence at piers, especially with a surge of local and foreign tourists. The Coast Guard will also deploy K9 units, medical teams, security personnel, and vessel inspectors to monitor passenger vessels for overcapacity.
The Philippine Coast Guard reports that there are no more oil leaks from the sunken empty Princess Empress. Meanwhile, the Department of Social Welfare and Development continues to give assistance to affected residents. Shane Lim tells us more.
Philippine Coast Guard Deputy Commander for Operations, Vice Admiral Rolando Punzalan Jr. says only 3 out of the 8 tanks of the sunken empty Princess Empress still contain oil. Based on the survey conducted by the Remotely Operated Vehicle, or ROV Hakuyo, the 5 tanks that contain industrial oil fuel are now empty. Punzalan says oil marks were found in these tanks, yet he confirms there is no more leakage of oil. Specialized bags arrived yesterday which will be used to contain the oil from the remaining 3 tanks. The ROV Hakuyo will be used to place these bags in the hull of the tanks. As of now, PCG officials cannot yet determine how long it will take to retrieve the oil if bagging operations will be used. PCG, with the help of experts from Japan, US, and Korea, continue with the oil spill cleanup. Officials says they have collected over 13,000 liters of oily water mixture and 147 sacks of oil, contaminated materials. Meanwhile, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, says they have allocated 1.5 million in assistance to the residents of Batangas affected by the oil spill. As of now, a total of 1,762 family food packs were distributed to the affected fishermen and tourism industry workers in 6 barangays in Verde Island. The DSWD also prepared 9,000 food packs for the residents of Nasugbu, Calatagan, Balayan, Lemery, Lian, and San Juan, Batangas. The processing of funds from DSWD Calabarzon for LGUs in Batangas for the implementation of Cash for Work programs is being arranged. Latest information says a total of 1,767 families, equivalent to 7,740 individuals who are affected by the oil spill in Batangas. Shane Lim for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United Kingdom and the Philippines are strengthening their maritime cooperation. The UK ensures there will be access for the Philippines in world-class maritime training. UK Minister for Indo-Pacific Anne-Marie Trevelyan met with the Philippine Coast Guard. Trevelyan states the UK has plans of more maritime engagement with the Philippines.
We are working to strengthen regional expertise in maritime law and security, sharing legal and technical knowledge, and ensuring that partners in the Philippines have access to world-class training, including at the UK's Britannia Royal Navy College. And we will be expanding our work to protect the marine environment.
During the meeting, PCG Commandant Admiral Artemio Abus says they discussed the provisions stated in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea to ensure the safety in the Indo-Pacific region.
The application of the rules of law, our approach, we are like-minded nations, the United Kingdom and the Philippines. We uphold the rules of law and the UNCLOS, the provisions of the UNCLOS. We have the same advocacy, and that is to ensure peace, stability, and prosperity in the region.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez assures that the House of Representatives supports all bills related to the modernization of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP. Romualdez made the statement of assurance during the HOR AFP Fellowship Series held in Cebu City, which was also attended by lawmakers and high-ranking military officers led by AFP Chief of Staff General Andres Santino. Romualdez says that the bicameral report on the proposals to amend the bill about fixing the terms of the tour of duty among the AFP Chief of Staff and major service commanders is now approved in Congress. He adds that the Chief of Staff would still enjoy a fixed tenure of 3 years unless sooner replaced by the President. Meanwhile, the tour of duty of Commanding General and Flag Officer of Philippine Army, Philippine Air Force, and Philippine Navy has now been turned into 2 years, and their retirement age has been changed to 57 years old from 56 years old. Romualdez states that the amendatory bill for the military top brass term would pave the way for balanced rule, continuity, and professionalism in the AFP leadership. It is based in meritocracy and lack of political agenda for the national peace and security.
Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla announced an alleged mastermind in the slaying of Negros Oriental Governor Roel Degamo has been arrested. Remulla says operatives from the National Bureau of Investigation, or NBI, nabbed the mastermind who was hiding inside the country. Now the NBI has 11 out of 12 suspects in their custody. He asserts the Degamo case is 99% solved. Remulla says authorities are looking into 2 to 3 more suspects. He also admits that politics is the motive for the crime. Reporters also asked Remulla over Congressman Arnie Teves's alleged involvement in the case, to which he replied the latter fits in the middle of everything. He, however, declined to disclose further information about the mastermind. Instead, Remulla says more details on Monday.
Coming up, former U.S. President Donald Trump is indicted by the Manhattan grand jury. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky admits fear over U.S. elections in 2024. And U.S. claims Russia offers food to North Korea in exchange for weapons. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break.
We're in the sky. Kaya lumilipad na naman tayo. Sino ba itong uupo ngayon sa ating iconic chairs?
Finally,
Alam mo,
nag-guess
hindi
na
ko-
rin ako dito. We just canceled everything for you.
Talaga, ay naku, nakakatuwa naman. Medyo kakaiba ang ating papasukin ngayong araw. It's Marites time! Tinur niya tayo sa kanyang bagong buhay.
Mundo.
Tamang-tama, pinag-uusapan sila ng lahat ngayon.
Tiyak ka!
Ayan na.
Ayan na. Alam mo talaga siya, no?
Yes!
Tatlong buwan! Kinasal ka na?
Yes!
Ngayon natin malalaman ang totoo. So now let's spill the coffee.
Spill the coffee.
Yes. And we're here at Net25. Ito ang tahanan ng Corina Interviews.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's get together sa Net25.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has become the first American president to be charged with a crime. Several media outlets are reporting a grand jury in New York voted Thursday to indict Trump over hush money payments made to an adult film star ahead of the 2016 election. When the news broke, a handful of Trump supporters protested outside the Manhattan District Attorney's office. What Trump is charged with is not yet known because the felony indictment is under seal by the district attorney. A spokesperson for the district attorney says Trump's lawyers have been contacted to coordinate his surrender for arraignment on the charges. An arraignment date has not been announced, but it's likely the former president will turn himself in sometime next week. Reaction from Trump is predictable. He calls the indictment political persecution and an attack on the country. Trump says they are trying to influence an election. The 76-year-old Republican is making his third run at the White House.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky worries that support from the U.S. for his country will diminish after the country's election next year. This after Fox News host Tucker Carlson sent a questionnaire to potential and declared candidates for the GOP presidential nomination in the 2024 election. He urged them to put their positions on the Ukraine conflict and confrontation with Russia on the record. Former President Donald Trump said that Kyiv should expect little money coming from them if he will be elected again. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis described the conflict as a territorial dispute and is not a vital strategic interest for the U.S. Zelensky did not name either U.S. politician during an interview, even as he shared concerns over a possible political shift in Washington.
Lawmakers from the pro-Russia Nationalist Freedom Party walked out of the lower house of Austria's parliament on Thursday. This during a speech by Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, protesting that it violated Austria's neutrality. Austria says its neutrality prevents it from military involvement in the conflict. While it supports Ukraine politically, it cannot send the country weapons in its fight against the Russian invasion. Lawmakers who walked out of the chamber left small placards on their desks featuring the party logo and either space for neutrality or for peace.
UN Rights Chief Volker Turk claims Russia's conflict with Ukraine is threatening humanity. Speaking before the United Nations Human Rights Council, Turk blames the conflict for sharp increases in the prices of food, energy, and other commodities.
На нашій українській землі відбувається битва за основу вільного світу. Ми точно переможемо в цій битві. Російське зло впаде саме тут, в Україні, і більше не зможе піднятися. Людяність переможе.
He warns the war pushed some 71 million people into poverty. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vows to defeat Russia. He made his pledge as he and several European leaders visited Bucha.
На нашій українській землі відбувається битва за основу вільного світу. Ми точно переможемо в цій битві. Російське зло впаде саме тут, в Україні, і більше не зможе піднятися. Людяність переможе.
Russian authorities have arrested an American journalist on charges of spying for Washington. Evan Gershkovich has been working for the Wall Street Journal when Russia's FSB security forces picked him up. The arrest marks a serious escalation in the Kremlin's efforts to silence perceived critics of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. According to media watchdog Reporters Without Borders, Gershkovich had been investigating the Russian mercenary military company, the Wagner Group. The FSB says he is being detained for gathering information on Russia's military-industrial complex. The 31-year-old reporter is being held in a city about 1,800 kilometers east of Moscow. His family had immigrated to the U.S. from Russia when he was a child. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he's deeply concerned about the arrest. He denounced Moscow's efforts to punish the media. U.S. President Joe Biden calls on Russia to release the American journalist.
Washington warns its citizens in Russian territory to immediately depart after the arrest of a Wall Street journalist in Moscow. U.S. State Department Secretary Antony Blinken released a statement prioritizing the safety and security of citizens abroad. Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre shared concerns over the arrest of journalist Evan Gershkovich in Russia. Jean-Pierre says the Russian travel advisory is at level 4, restricting Americans to travel to Moscow. Washington seeks to establish consular access to provide all appropriate support for Gershkovich. Local media states Gershkovich was covering the war in Ukraine and the Wagner mercenary group before getting detained.
The United States claims Russia is sending a delegation to North Korea to offer food in exchange for weapons. According to U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby, any arms deal between North Korea and Russia would violate UN Security Council resolutions. This statement follows U.S. accusations that North Korea has been supplying arms to the Russian military in Ukraine, as well as Russian mercenaries, the Wagner Group. Pyongyang denies these claims. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury has blacklisted a Slovak man for acting as a broker between Russia and North Korea. He exchanges weapons for cash, aircraft, commodities, and raw materials. This comes as Western sanctions have hindered Russia's ability to replace dilapidated weapons in its war in Ukraine. Russia has since turned to other countries, with Iran becoming Moscow's top military supporter in December 2020. Japan announces a trade restriction on 23 types of machinery used in the production of semiconductors. The regulation aligns with the U.S. goal of curtailing Chinese access to advanced chip technology. Japan did not explicitly specify China as a target. They say that any exports of specific equipment will need permission from the government to prevent advanced technology from being used for military purposes. Industry Minister Yasutoshi Nishimura states that Japan does not have one specific country in mind with the measures. The restrictions will come into effect in July. They are likely to affect equipment manufactured by at least a dozen Japanese companies. Nishimura adds that the impact on domestic companies is expected to be limited. Japan was once the dominant chip producer, but its market share has dipped to around 10%.
China says Japan was harming themselves when they aligned with the United States semiconductor restriction. Washington claims Beijing will use advanced semiconductors to enhance its military power.
供应链平衡的发展是市场规律和企业选择共同作用的结果。将经贸和科技问题政治化、工具化、武器化，人为破坏全球产供链的稳定，这种行为只会损人害己。
Seoul claims that North Korea executes people for sharing South Korean videos. North Korea's human rights are stifling, with right abuses in communities, prison camps, public executions, torture, and arbitrary arrests. Prince Limonero tells us more.
South Korea's Unification Ministry has collated a 450-page report of North Korea's abuses of human rights, torture, confiscation of human remains, and many other things. The oppressive regime commits human rights abuses against its own citizens, most notably in the country's communities, prison camps, and public execution. As described in the report, a pregnant woman who was 6 months pregnant was executed by the regime for pointing out the late Kim Il-sung in a video that circulated on social media. There are also 6 teenagers ranging from 16 to 17 years old who have been executed by North Korea in Wonsan Gangwon province because they watched a video from South Korea about smoking opium at a stadium there. In addition to the killings and torture, the regime also forced families and blackmailed them into letting their families be the subjects of human experiments and tests, or else their families will end up being sent to prison camps. Several alarming experiments are carried out by North Korea on humans, and disabled people are forced to undergo sterilization as a result. There have also been reports that the regime also carries out hysterectomy procedures on women with dwarfism, and they even ask people for a list of those with dwarfism. At the moment, the Unification Ministry has identified 11 political prison camps in the country, and 5 of them are operating at the moment. In his statement, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol emphasizes the importance of letting the international community know about North Korea's gruesome abuses. Despite the fact that North Korea pursues the advancement of its nuclear arsenals rather than improving the quality of its citizens, there is no economic aid that North Korea should receive, not even a penny. In addition to the reports, it is a compilation of the testimonies collected from over 500 North Koreans who fled their countries in the years from 2017 to 2022. The report is South Korea's effort to highlight the poor living conditions of North Korean citizens. Prince Limonero, for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Up next, Germany sees an increase in crime among children. A Bangladeshi journalist is jailed for fake news. And Australia passes laws targeting its worst polluters. Please stay tuned. The Mata ng Agila International will be back with more global news.
With the rising population coupled with the impact of the pandemic and global economic challenges, poverty remains to be a pressing issue in the Philippines. Ngunit kahit napakalaki ng suliranin sa kahirapan, may mga grupong gumagawa ng paraan para ito ay maibsan. Isa na dyan ang non-profit organization na Unlad International na isang dekada nang nagtuturo at nagbibigay ng kabuhayan at pag-asa sa ating mga kababayan. Its 10-year journey has been marked by incredible achievements. And in today's episode, we celebrate Unlad International's successes, reflect on its experiences, and look ahead to the future with optimism and determination.
Ang mission and vision po kasi ng UNLAD is to alleviate poverty through livelihood and education. So ang mga metrics po na aming tinitingnan ay kung gaano karami po ang natulungan na mabigyan ng livelihood at nabigyan po ng mga trainings.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
The UK Ministry of Security has announced it will use artificial intelligence bots to uncover national security threats. The ministry allays fears, saying that the technology will not be used to spy on British citizens. Colleen Tenorio tells us more.
UK Security Minister Tom Tugendhat announces that artificial intelligence would be employed to collect intelligence in order to detect potential security risks against Britain. The Ministry of Defense has plans to use computers to analyze large amounts of data to identify important information that may be overlooked by humans. Tugendhat highlights the importance of openly sourced data in order to identify security and enemy threats, citing the lessons learned during the Russian invasion of Ukraine as a prime example, if analysts do not become overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information. He says that a new division called the Open Source Intelligence Hub, or OSINT, will be established to solely concentrate on assessing data available to the public, in addition to the work of M15 and M16. Tugendhat says that while traditional spying remains beneficial, he cautioned that intelligence has changed due to the world being much different from what it was a decade ago. The minister adds that OSINT will contribute to the detail of intelligence acquired through traditional spying and will be essential in combating false information that can be damaging to society, the Telegraph stated. He reports that in February last year, a group of students at the U.S. Liberal Arts College stumbled upon a TikTok video which demonstrated Russian tanks stationed outside Belgorod, Russia. The government is planning to release an AI white paper that will outline strategies to support research and development in expanding tech industry. Tugendhat emphasizes that the unit will not be utilized for the purpose of monitoring British citizens, but rather understanding what's already out there. He adds that false informations spreading through the use of social media were damaging the security of the nation, being undermined by the attempt to tear us apart. Commercial intelligence firm Bellingcat used similar methods to demonstrate that Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 was shot out the sky by the Russian military in July 2014. The minister hopes that the new division will be accomplished as Bellingcat, who have demonstrated the significance of their role. Colleen Tenorio for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Smartphones trend in today's society as technology progress, but a number of people are choosing to embrace the simplicity of dumb phones. Colorado resident Jose Briones is a dumb phone user. He says people who want to regain their time and attention and have a deeper and more purposeful life. Smartphones have drawbacks, mental strain, background anxiety, and sapping both motivation and personal time. That is why he thinks some people resonate with dumb phones. He notes that dumb phones are giving off a retro or cool vibe to the young hipster crowd, tempting them to give it a try. Dumb phones are nothing more than a small screen handset with a minimal number of apps that are likely to be categorized as feature phones. Although some dumb phones preserve some convenience apps such as email, Spotify, Google Maps, or Microsoft Teams.
Investigators hope data from onboard computers will help them determine what caused the two Army or U.S. Army helicopters to crash in Kentucky. All 9 soldiers aboard the 2 choppers died in the accident. The soldiers had been taking part in a routine nighttime training exercise late Wednesday night when the accident occurred. The 2 Black Hawk Medic Vac helicopters went down in this field. It is near a residential area. The pilots were flying the aircraft using night vision goggles. No one on the ground was injured. So far, the Army is not commenting on whether the choppers collided in midair before they hit the ground. Investigators are on the scene, combing through the wreckage, looking for clues as to what caused the crash. The helicopters had been equipped with a device similar to the black boxes on airlines. It records the performance of the aircraft and can be used to analyze crashes.
In Canada, a 16-year-old boy is dead after he was stabbed at the Toronto subway station. Residents there share with us their thoughts about this kind of unprovoked attack that has been plaguing the city for months now. Yolanda Espiras tells us more.
Another deadly incident happened last weekend aboard the Toronto transit system, and this time a 16-year-old boy died after what Toronto police is calling an unprovoked attack. The victim, 16-year-old Gabriel Magalhães, was at Gil subway station, sitting on a bench with a friend, when the suspect approached the victim unprovoked and stabbed him multiple times. The victim was transported to the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. The suspect, 22-year-old Jordan O'Brien Tobin, of no fixed address, was arrested on Saturday and is now charged with first-degree murder. This tragic incident adds to the series of growing violent attacks happening on Toronto's public transit system. We've interviewed some Toronto residents, and this is what they have to say about this growing violence.
I think it's terrible knowing that Canada is one of the safer countries to live in, and TTC violence is now prevalent more than ever.
Honestly, sometimes I really have no choice because it's just unrealistic to take an Uber everywhere, especially as a working student with no car. Sometimes the TTC is really just the most convenient and the most affordable way for me to get to and from school and work.
Not a day goes by where I don't think, will I be next? Will my friends be next, or will my family be next? Especially me and my family have been taking public transit for almost all our lives, so it's very scary. It's very, very frightening.
I find myself becoming a lot more anxious when I'm on the TTC. I have to be really hyper vigilant just because I really don't know who's sitting beside me or who's standing beside me on the bus or in the station.
But I think personally, the city of Toronto and TTC itself is doing a great job in making us feel safe by hiring more police officers in the subway stations, even close to the subway stations as well.
Gabriel Magalhães was a grade 11 student who, according to his parents, was good in math and wanted to study astrophysics in university. Reporting from Toronto, Canada, Yolanda Aspiras for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Germany has seen a rise in crime among children. This as some groups push to lower the age of criminal accountability. Agila tells us more.
Germany's new crime statistics indicate a rise in juvenile delinquency. However, experts are dubious about whether reducing the age of criminal accountability is the right approach to lowering the crimes. In 2022, the Federal Criminal Police Office reported that the number of offenses committed by minors in Germany had increased by a third compared to the year before. A total of 5.6 million criminal offenses were reported in 2022, with an increase of 11.5% from the previous year. Nearly 190,000 suspects, the majority aged between 14 and 18, with theft being the frequent crime, followed by assault, damage to property, and drug-related offenses. Interior Minister Nancy Faeser of the center-left Social Democrats or SPD stated that safeguarding children who are the most susceptible in society is her primary concern. Holger Monk, president of the Federal Criminal Police Office, is also keen to stress that the overall accountability should be lowered. Holger Monk, president of the Federal Criminal Police Office, is also keen to stress that the overall crime level last year is similar to that of 2019. These figures will likely intensify the ongoing argument in Germany about whether the age of criminal accountability should be lowered. Under German law, children under the age of 14 cannot be held legally responsible for any criminal act. The discussion was fueled after the death of a 12-year-old girl in Freudenberg. Two girls, both aged 12 and 13, are allegedly responsible for the killing. The data prompted Baden-Württemberg's Interior Minister Thomas Strobel, Justice Minister Marion Kempkes, and Rainer Wendt of the German Police Union to review and lower the age of criminal responsibility. They say it is not about punishing them or putting them in jail, but rather teaching and helping them to develop good habits. Sybil Winter, a child psychiatrist and senior consultant at at Berlin's Charité Hospital rejects this idea. She argues that the pandemic has exacerbated psychological stress and domestic violence. Winter adds that even with the pre-existing mental health issues, there are still ways to address the problem without the involvement of the criminal justice system. Agila from Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Samsuzaman Shams, a journalist from Prothom Alo Daily in Bangladesh, has been jailed on charges of publishing fake news. His article on high food prices went viral, with the court citing a specific quote as smearing the government. The quotation was from a laborer who asked, "What is the use of this freedom if we cannot afford rice?" The comment was regarded as a sign of the growing concerns over the rising food prices worldwide. Shams was denied bail and appeared in court a day after his arrest. Civil rights groups have criticized the arrest, calling it an oppression of press freedom. Bangladeshi authorities deny the allegation, but the rights groups warn of a steady decline in freedoms in the country. Around 280 journalists face cases under the controversial Digital Security Act, or DSA, since it was enacted in 2018. The law minister Anisul Haq says the government is working with the media to remove their fear and is trying to improve the DSA.
Sporadic violence broke out in the Kenyan capital of Nairobi during a third day of anti-government demonstrations. The protests are being led by opposition leader Raila Odinga, who has called for rallies every Monday and Thursday. Tight security saw police dressed in riot gear patrolling the streets of Nairobi Thursday, watching for troublemakers. In some neighborhoods, demonstrators threw rocks and burned tires. Police responded with tear gas. The demonstrations have been declared illegal by the government. Thursday's demonstration was less violent than the protests earlier in the week. Odinga accuses President William Ruto of stealing last year's election and doing nothing to control the high cost of living. Inflation in Kenya is running at 9.2%, with food inflation at more than 13%.
On Thursday, Turkey's parliament unanimously ratified Finland's application to become the 31st member of the North Atlantic Treaty, or NATO. This marked the end of a months-long negotiation process between the two countries. The ratification of Finland's application is the final major hurdle in the country's bid to join NATO. It was welcomed by NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, who calls it a great success that would make the alliance stronger and safer. Meanwhile, Finland's bid is now only a few formalities away from being finalized. Sweden is still on hold due to the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's demands to address certain security-related issues. However, Hungarian Prime Minister's office has called on to Sweden to clear the air and address the ample amount of grievances in order to move the process along. Finland and Sweden both abandoned their traditional positions of military non-alignment last year and applied for NATO membership in May 2022, following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The process of Finland's full acceptance into NATO is expected to be finalized as early as next week. Australia's government has passed new laws that target the country's worst polluters. The regulations will force coal mines, aluminum smelters, and oil refineries to cut emissions by 5% per year. Martin Bruckner of Murdoch University says it sends a message to people who think climate change is a myth.
It pretty much pushed climate denialists in a corner, in that I think it is somewhat unstoppable that markets will respond to. We had a lot of market investment uncertainty over the last 10 years under a poorly defined climate policy where there was always a risk of something changing. So hopefully the investment climate will improve, especially in the renewable energy market.
Order. Give the call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Australia has pledged to reach zero emissions by 2050. Coming right up, esports continue to rise in the Philippines. Film actress Vanessa Hudgens named Philippine Tourism Ambassador. And Texas women recognized for positive community impact. Catch more news when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Ito po, diretso lang po yun. Ito po. Saan po sakayan pa Commonwealth po? Dito ba nakakain ulit? Pag-inis ka! Hello! 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 Huwag ka manigaw. Tama na pong road ko. Ano oras?
Ang ina ang ilaw ng tahanan, pero ang ama ang halige? Hindi.
Ito po si Jeffrey Tao. Magpapanggap akong sosyal na pulubi. Can I have this?
Yes, you can.
Can I buy a car with this? I will buy a cell phone.
It's too much expensive, you know.
I'm planning to buy a luxury bag with this.
Oh no! It's Biro only! Sunday 25!
Sunday 25.
Uy! Magpupropose na yan! Hindi ako magpupropose! Isosoli ko lang tong singsing kasi binentahan ako ng peke! Uy! Balik yung pera ko!
Kung sino ang makakabulot niyan na yung siyang magiging susunod na ako!
The Mobile Legends Professional League, or MPL, continues its 11th season with ongoing tournament games. Older generations may have a negative opinion of gaming, but teams in the Philippines have come a long way towards recognition and legitimacy. Samantha Intal tells us more.
Esports, or electronic sports, are competitive sports where players compete against each other in their video game of choice to win. The Philippine government gave the official recognition in 2017 to classify esports as a legitimate sport. This enabled professional players to obtain athletic licenses and compete internationally for prize money and titles, while representing the country. As esports in the country grows in popularity, various esports organizations have been formed. Among them are TNC Predators, Blacklist International, Brent Esports, and Cebu. The national team launched by the Philippine Esports Organization, or PESO. In 2019, TNC Predator made history by becoming the first Philippine-based team to win a major tournament, bagging about 15 million pesos in prize money. Blacklist International made an impression in 2022 as the reigning champion in MPLPH Season 10, taking home approximately 56,000 pesos worth of prize money. Also began to emerge throughout the Philippines. One of them is the Nationals, the Philippines' first esports franchise league since its inception in 2019. Some Philippine corporations are collaborating with gaming companies to show mutual support for esports in the country, such as building infrastructures to boost operating capability. Even politicians are supporting esports. Congressman Christopher De Venecia filed House Bill 1285, a bill declaring every October as National Esports Month. This follows a resolution passed in the previous Congress to show support for the rapidly growing industry. The bill also claims to combat the negative image often associated with esports, from being a bad addiction to a potential career. Winning a tournament takes a measurable amount of practice spent to hone up the skill. The esports industry continues to boom both in recognition and popularity. More sponsors, brands, and organizers continue to contribute to existing tournaments. Esports players are finally making their dream of a professional gaming career into reality. Samantha ito for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Vanessa Hudgens named Global Tourism Ambassador for the Philippines. The title aims to recognize individual contributions in promoting the Philippines as one of the world's top tourism destinations. The Global Tourism Ambassadorship is presented in partnership with the Office of the Presidential Advisor on Creative Communications and supported by the Department of Tourism. The Filipino-American actress was known for her roles in High School Musical and The Princess Switch. She is currently in the country to shoot a travel documentary which aims to dig deeper into her Filipino heritage.
As Women's History Month ends, our story brings us to Corpus Christi in Texas. A local group there launches a movement to honor and celebrate the achievements of women who positively impact the community. Here's Jane Kathleen Gregorio with the story.
A movement to honor female leaders and entrepreneurs took place in Corpus Christi, Texas. La Jefa, which in Spanish means Lady Boss, is the name of the initiative launched by a Corpus Christi, Texas resident, Melina Gosa. The BOSS program, which stands for Bringing Other Sisters Support, invites the public to send in their nominations of women who they believe are making a positive difference in the community. The nominees were then recognized at the very first ever La Jefa Awards, which took place during the International Women's Day. Among the nominees, a total of 10 awards were distributed, 9 of whom to women in their respective fields, and a 10th award given to a junior La Jefa member who was helpful in her community.
So this was an opportunity for me to bring women together, to combine our resources and be able to help 2 local nonprofits versus 1 on an event that empowered women and showed women what we can do if we all focus on each other's strengths versus weaknesses. Actions like these are important because it builds relationships, it builds community, and it helps us all work smarter, not harder.
Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Mata ng Agila International, Corpus Christi, Texas. Trusted, connected, on point.
And time flew by so fast. To start off your weekend, here's a quote from 18th century American poet Walt Whitman. Keep your face always toward the sunshine, and shadows will fall behind you.
So stay optimistic and positive, because being positive or negative can determine the outcome of all your actions and goals.
Put the past behind you, look to the future.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. Happy weekend, everyone. I am Ricky Matay.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores, wishing everyone a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.